Kim Tae-ho stared out the window of the transport ship as the Galactic Military Academy came into view. The massive station floated in space like a silver wheel, spinning slowly around a bright star. Ships from dozens of worlds docked at its ports, carrying young beings from across the galaxy. Tae-ho pressed his face against the cold glass. Back home on Earth, he had dreamed of this moment for years. Now that it was here, his stomach felt heavy with worry. "Stop looking so scared," said Park So-ra from the seat next to him. She was also from Earth, one of only 12 humans accepted into the academy this year. "We made it this far." Tae-ho nodded but did not look away from the window. "I wonder if we belong here." So-ra laughed, but it sounded forced. "Of course we do. They picked us, didn't they?" The transport ship shook as it connected to the docking port. A voice came over the speakers, speaking in Galactic Standard. "All new cadets, report to Base 7 for processing." Tae-ho grabbed his small bag and followed So-ra toward the exit. The moment they stepped off the ship, something felt wrong. His feet barely touched the ground. Each step sent him bouncing slightly into the air. "The gravity," So-ra whispered. "It's so light." A tall, blue-skinned alien in uniform approached them. His eyes were large and yellow, and his voice sounded like music. "Human cadets, I presume? I am Officer Kicksdell. Follow me." They walked through long corridors filled with other new cadets. Tae-ho saw beings he had only read about in books. There were the tall, thin ethereals with their pale skin and silver hair. The stocky rocklings looked like living stones with glowing eyes. Flying creatures with rainbow wings chattered in high voices as they floated above the crowd. All of them stared at the humans. "Are those the Deathworlders?" one whispered. "They look so primitive," said another. "I heard their planet tries to kill them every day." Tae-ho kept his head down and tried to ignore the stares. On Earth, he was considered average height and build. Here, he felt like a giant. His muscles, built by years of Earth's heavy gravity, made him look thick and strong compared to the other cadets. Officer Kicksdell led them to a large room filled with floating screens and medical equipment. "You will undergo standard processing," he explained. "Physical examination, mental evaluation, and species classification." The physical exam was strange. The medical scanner beeped constantly as it examined Tae-ho's body. The alien doctor, a creature that looked like a walking flower, kept making worried sounds. "Your bone density is remarkable," the doctor said, reading the results. "And your muscle mass. This cannot be correct. Are you enhanced?" "No, sir," Tae-ho replied. "This is normal for humans." The doctor made notes on a floating tablet. "Fascinating. Your species has adapted to truly harsh conditions. No wonder your world is classified as a death world." After the exam, the human cadets were given their room assignments. Tae-ho found himself sharing quarters with Nex Viral, a young alien whose species looked like large insects with 4 arms. Nex Viral was polite, but clearly nervous around him. "I have heard stories about your world," Nex Viral said as they unpacked their belongings. "Is it true that your sky rains acid?" Tae-ho smiled. "Only sometimes. We call it acid rain, but it's not that dangerous if you stay inside." Nex Viral's compound eyes widened. "And the giant storms that destroy entire cities? Hurricanes can be bad," Tae-ho admitted. "But we have warning systems. Most people survive them." "Most people?" Nex Viral backed away slightly. "What happens to the others?" Tae-ho realized his mistake. To him, hurricanes were just part of life on Earth. To beings, From safer worlds, the idea that people sometimes died in storms was terrifying. "We're very good at taking care of each other," he said quickly. "Humans are tough. We help each other through difficult times." The next morning, classes began. Taeho's first instructor was a tall reptilian alien named Veltara. She had green, scales, yellow eyes, and sharp teeth that showed when she spoke. Her voice was harsh and cold. "I am Instructor Veltara," she announced to the class of 30 cadets. "I will teach you combat basics and survival skills. Some of you come from soft worlds where danger is rare. Others," her eyes found Taeho in the crowd, "come from places where violence is common." She walked closer to where the human cadets sat. "The galactic military values discipline above all else. We do not need wild animals who fight without thinking. We need soldiers who follow orders." Taeho felt his face grow hot with anger, but he said nothing. Sora reached over and squeezed his hand, warning him to stay quiet. "Today we will run basic fitness tests," Veltara continued. "These will show me what each of you can do." The fitness tests were held in a large gymnasium with equipment from many different worlds. Taeho watched as other cadets struggled with exercises that seemed easy to him. The light gravity made everything feel simple. When his turn came, he ran the obstacle course at what felt like a comfortable pace. He finished in less than half the time of the previous cadet. The room fell, silent. Veltara checked her timer twice. "Run it again," she ordered. Taeho ran it again, this time even faster because he was warmed up. The other cadets stared at him with wide eyes. "Impossible," Veltara muttered. She looked at Taeho with something that might have been fear. "What are you?" "Just a human, ma'am," Taeho replied quietly. For the rest of the class, Veltara watched him carefully. Every exercise he performed with ease seemed to make her more angry. When he lifted weights that other cadets could barely move, she wrote angry notes on her tablet. After class, Sora caught up with him in the hallway. "Did you see how scared they looked?" "I was trying not to stand out," Taeho said. "I think I failed." "Maybe standing out isn't such a bad thing," Sora replied. "They need to learn what humans can really do." But as they walked back to their, quarters, Taeho noticed how other cadets moved out of their way. Some looked curious, others looked frightened, a few looked angry. That evening he lay in his bed listening to the sounds of the space station. Through the thin walls he could hear other cadets talking about the humans. Most of the words were not kind. "They're too dangerous," someone said. "Deathworlders don't belong here," said another voice. "Did you see how fast that one moved? It's not natural." Taeho closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and he had a feeling that Instructor Veltara was just getting started with them. He had come to the academy to prove that humans belonged among the stars, but it seemed like everyone was determined to prove the opposite. Outside his window, Earth was invisible among the billions of stars. For the first time since leaving home, Taeho felt truly alone. 3 weeks had passed since Taeho arrived at the academy, and things had not gotten better. If anything, they had gotten worse. Instructor Veltara seemed to have made it her personal mission to make life difficult for the human cadets. During combat simulations, she always gave them the hardest scenarios. When other cadets made mistakes, she corrected them gently. When humans made the same mistakes, she shouted at them in front of everyone. "Deathworlders think they know everything about fighting," she would say. "But there is more to war than brute force. Today's lesson was about teamwork in dangerous situations. The class gathered in the simulation room, where holographic enemies and environments could be created to test their skills. Veltara activated a scenario that showed a burning building with trapped civilians inside. "Your mission is to rescue as many people as possible," she explained. "You have limited time and equipment. Make your choices wisely." One by one, teams of cadets entered the simulation. Most groups managed to save about half the civilians before retreating to safety. When they came out, Veltara praised their smart decision-making. "Good work," she told a team of ethereal cadets. "You recognized when to cut your losses and retreat. That is the mark of good officers." When it was Teho's turn, he entered the simulation with Sora and 2 other cadets. The holographic building was full of smoke and flame. Screams came from the upper floors where people were trapped. Teho's team worked quickly and efficiently. They saved the civilians on the first floor easily. Then they moved to the second floor, where the fire was worse. The other cadets wanted to leave, but Teho could still hear voices calling for help from above. "We can get more," he said, heading for the stairs to the 3rd floor. "Teho, no!" Sora called. "It's too dangerous." But he was already moving. The earthborn strength in his legs carried him up the burning stairs 3 at a time. He found 5 more civilians trapped in a room and carried them down to safety, one by one. When he emerged from the simulation, smoke stains covered his uniform, but all the civilians had been saved. The room was silent. No other team had saved everyone. Veltara's face was dark with anger. "Cadet Kim," she said in a cold voice. "What did I tell you about following orders?" "You told us to save as many people as possible, ma'am," Teho replied. "I saved them all." "You were told to make smart choices. Going into that fire was suicide." Her voice echoed through the room. "In a real situation, you would be dead, and your team would have lost their leader." "But they weren't real deaths, ma'am," Teho said quietly. "They were holograms. I could hear them calling for help." "They were acceptable losses." Veltara's scales seemed to change color as she grew more angry. "Every good officer learns that some people cannot be saved." The other cadets watched in uncomfortable silence. Even Next Viral looked worried. "A true soldier follows orders and thinks with his head, not his heart," Veltara continued. "You acted like a wild animal, not a military officer." Teho felt his own anger rising, but he kept his voice level. "On Earth, we don't leave people behind if we can help it." "This is not Earth." Veltara stepped closer to him. "This is the civilized galaxy, where we make rational decisions. Your primitive instincts have no place here." The room fell completely quiet. Even the soft hum of the station's systems seemed to stop. "Ma'am," Sora said carefully, "Teho completed the mission successfully. Shouldn't that count for something?" Veltara turned her yellow eyes on Sora. "Did I ask for your opinion, Deathworlder?" "No, ma'am, but then be quiet." Veltara's voice was so loud that several cadets jumped. "I am sick of you humans thinking you know better than everyone else." She walked to the center of the room and looked around at all the cadets. "Let me show you what happens when Deathworlders don't learn their place." She pointed at Teho. "You, come here." Teho walked to the center of the room, his heart beating fast. He had a bad feeling about what was going to happen. "Hand-to-hand combat is an important skill," Veltara announced, "but it must be controlled and disciplined. I will demonstrate the difference between wild fighting and proper technique." She moved to face Teho, towering over him by almost a meter. Her reptilian body was built for speed and power, with long arms that could reach much farther than his. "This will be a teaching demonstration," she said loudly. "I want everyone to watch carefully." The first strike came without warning. Veltara's scaled hand hit Taeho's shoulder, spinning him around. He had not been ready for the attack. "Notice how I control the distance," Veltara said as she struck again, this time hitting his ribs. "Proper combat is about technique, not emotion." Taeho tried to block her next attack, but she was faster than he expected. Her fist connected with his stomach, doubling him over. "Fight back," she hissed, quiet enough that only he could hear. "Show them what a Deathworlder really is." But Taeho did not fight back. This was supposed to be a demonstration, not a real fight. He tried to defend himself without attacking her. Veltara grew more aggressive. Her strikes came faster and harder. "See how the Deathworlder cowers?" she called to the class. "All that primitive strength means nothing without discipline." A blow to his leg nearly knocked him down. Another hit his back as he tried to move away. The other cadets watched with growing unease. "Instructor Veltara," Nexiviral called out. "Perhaps that's enough demonstration?" "I will decide when it's enough," she snapped back. Taeho's nose was bleeding now. His ribs hurt where she had hit him repeatedly. Still, he did not fight back. He kept trying to remind himself that this was a lesson, not a battle. "This is what happens when you don't follow orders," Veltara said as she circled him like a predator. "This is what happens when you think you're better than everyone else." Sora stood up from her seat. "Stop this! He's not even fighting back!" "Sit down," Veltara roared. "This is what your friend needs to learn." She turned back to Taeho, and her yellow eyes were full of hatred. "Your people think they're so special because they survived a dangerous world. But you're just animals who got lucky." The next strike was different. It was not a demonstration anymore. Veltara's scaled hand hit the side of Taeho's face with all her strength, and he crashed into the training equipment behind him. Pain exploded through his head and blood ran from his nose onto the floor. "Stay down, primitive," Veltara hissed, standing over him. "Learn your place." For a moment, Taeho lay still. His vision was blurry and his whole body hurt. The room was completely silent except for the sound of his own breathing. Then he started to get up. "I said stay down." Veltara raised her hand to strike again, but something had changed in Taeho's eyes. The patience and control he had shown for weeks was gone. In its place was something that made several cadets step backward in fear. Something that reminded them all that humans came from a world that tried to kill them every single day, and that they had learned to kill it back. What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but every cadet in that room would remember it for the rest of their lives. Taeho did not just stand up. He exploded upward from the floor like a spring that had been compressed too far. His movement was so fast that Veltara, despite her quick reflexes, barely had time to blink. For 3 weeks, Taeho had been holding back. He had walked carefully in the light gravity, moved slowly to avoid scaring the other cadets, and kept his strength hidden. He had been trying so hard to fit in that he had forgotten what he really was. He was human. He was from Earth, and Earth did not raise weaklings. Veltara's hand was still raised to strike when Taeho moved, but instead of cowering or trying to block, he stepped forward into her attack. His left hand caught her wrist, and his right arm wrapped around her elbow. It was a simple move that any human child learned in basic self-defense classes. On Earth, it was used to stop bullies and protect yourself from bigger attackers. The technique was thousands of years old and had been tested in countless fights, but no one had ever used it with the strength of someone who grew up under crushing gravity. The sound that followed was like a tree branch snapping in a storm. Veltara's arm bent backward at the elbow, but it bent too far, in a direction that arms were never meant to go. Her scream filled the training room. The sound was high and terrible, full of shock and pain. She fell to her knees, clutching her broken arm against her body. Taeho stood over her, breathing hard. Blood still ran from his nose, and his face was already swelling where she had hit him, but his eyes were clear and focused. The entire room was frozen in shock. 30 cadets from across the galaxy stared at the scene in complete silence. Most of them had never seen real violence before. Their worlds were safe, civilized places where conflicts were resolved with words, not force. "What have you done?" Nexaviral whispered, his compound eyes wide with horror. Sora was the first to move. She ran to Taeho's side and grabbed his arm. "Taeho, are you okay?" He looked down at Veltara, who was still screaming and holding her. Broken arm. For a moment his face showed something that might have been regret. But then he remembered all the insults, all the unfair treatment, all the times she had called him primitive and animal. "I defended myself," he said quietly. Other instructors were already rushing into the room, alerted by Veltara's screams. The first to arrive was Commander Yixtar, a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms. He took one look at the scene and immediately understood what had happened. "Medical team to training room 7, he shouted into his communication device. "Priority emergency." More instructors arrived within seconds. They surrounded Veltara and began treating her injury while shooting worried glances at Taeho. The human cadet stood calmly in the center of the chaos, making no move to run or hide. "What happened here?" demanded Commander Yixtar. Before Taeho could answer, Sora stepped forward. "Instructor Veltara was conducting a demonstration," she said firmly. "She attacked Cadet Kim repeatedly while he tried not to fight back. When she struck him in the face with full force, he defended himself." "That's not what happened," one of the alien cadets protested. "The human just went crazy and attacked her." "No," said a quiet voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to look at Nexaviral, who was trembling but spoke clearly. "The human female is telling the truth. Instructor Veltara She was not conducting a fair demonstration. She was hurting him." Other cadets began to speak up, some supporting Taeho's version of events, others claiming he had attacked without cause. The room filled with confused voices and arguments. Commander. Yixtar held up all 4 of his hands for silence. "Everyone out except for the human cadets," he ordered. "Now!" The alien cadets filed out quickly, many of them still staring at Taeho with fear and amazement. When the room was empty except for the humans and the commander, Yixtar activated a recording device. "I need to know exactly what happened," he said. "The truth. All of it." Sora told the story from beginning to end. She explained how Veltara had been treating the human cadets unfairly for weeks, how she had turned a simple demonstration into a one-sided beating, and how Taeho had tried not to fight back until the final blow. "He was bleeding," Sora said, her voice shaking with emotion. "She hit him so hard that he crashed into the equipment, and then she told him to stay down and called him primitive." Commander Yixtar looked at Taeho, who had remained silent through Sora's account. "Is this accurate, Cadet Kim?" "Yes, sir," Taeho replied. "I did not want to fight her. I was trying to follow orders and be a good cadet. But when she hit me that last time, he paused, searching for the right words. Something inside me said that enough was enough. The medical team had arrived and was carefully moving Veltara onto a floating stretcher. Her arm was secured in a temporary brace, and she had been given medicine for the pain. As they carried her past Tae-ho, she managed to lift her head and look at him. "Monster," she whispered through gritted teeth. "I knew you were dangerous." Tae-ho met her gaze steadily. "I am not a monster," he said. "I am just someone who won't be bullied anymore." After Veltara was taken away, Commander Yixtar dismissed the other human cadets. Only Tae-ho remained in the room. "Do you understand what you have done?" The commander asked. "I defended myself from an attacker," Tae-ho replied. "On Earth, that is considered normal." "This is not Earth," Yixtar said, but his voice was not angry. It sounded almost curious. "Most species in the galaxy have never developed the kind of reflexes you just displayed. They have never needed to." Tae-ho said nothing. "How long have you been holding back your true capabilities?" the commander continued. "Since I arrived," Tae-ho admitted. "I did not want to frighten anyone. I wanted to fit in." Commander Yixtar was quiet for a long moment, studying the young human with new eyes. "I think," he said finally, "that we have all been making some very dangerous assumptions about your species." He walked to the training equipment where Tai-ho had crashed earlier. There was a dent in the metal where his body had hit it. "Instructor Veltara is 3 times your size and twice your weight," he said. "Her species evolved from apex predators on a world of dangerous deserts. She has been training in combat for over 50 years. Tae-ho nodded. "And you defeated her in 3 seconds, with a technique so simple that our computers almost missed it in the recording." "I did not defeat her," Tae-ho protested. "I just stopped her from hitting me again." Commander Yixtar turned back to him, and there was something like respect in his alien features. "Cadet Kim," he said slowly, "I think it is time we learned what humans are really capable of." Outside the training room, word of what had happened was spreading through the academy like wildfire. Some cadets spoke of the incident with fear, others with excitement. But all of them understood one thing that they had not understood before. The humans were not just another species learning to be soldiers. They were soldiers already, forged by a world that had been trying to kill them since the day they were born, and they had just announced their presence to the galaxy. The tribunal hearing was scheduled for 3 days after the incident. During those 3 days, the Galactic Military Academy buzzed with rumors and gossip like an angry hive. Some cadets claimed that Tae-ho had planned the attack from the beginning. They said humans were too violent and dangerous to serve alongside civilized species. Others whispered that Instructor Veltara had been unfair to the humans from the start. Tae-ho spent most of those 3 days in his quarters, coming out only for meals and required classes. Wherever he went, conversations stopped, and eyes followed him. Some looks were fearful, others curious, but none were friendly except from his fellow humans. On the morning of the hearing, Commander Lee Hyun-woo arrived at the academy. He was a human military officer from Earth, sent to represent the human cadets in what could determine their future in the galactic military. Tae-ho met Commander Lee in a small conference room before the hearing. The older human was shorter than Tae-ho, but had the quiet confidence of someone who had seen many battles. "How are you holding up?" Commander Lee asked. "I've been better, sir," Tae-ho replied honestly. Everyone thinks I'm some kind of monster. Commander Lee smiled grimly. That's because they don't understand what you are. They see violence where there was actually remarkable restraint. Restraint? Tae-ho was confused. I broke her arm. Yes, you did. But let me ask you something. When she hit you that final time, what did you want to do? Tae-ho was quiet for a moment, remembering the rage that had filled him. I wanted to hurt her back, really hurt her. But you didn't. You used the minimum force necessary to stop her attack. If you had truly lost control, if you had used your full strength, Commander Lee paused. She would not have survived. The hearing was held in the Academy's main conference room. Admiral Kixmoth, the insectoid director of the Academy, sat at the head of a long table. Around the table sat 5 other high-ranking officers from different species, all of them looking serious and concerned. Veltara was there too, her arm in a medical cast and her yellow eyes full of anger. She kept glancing at Tae-ho with hatred. This tribunal will determine the facts of the incident 3 days ago, Admiral Kixmoth announced in his clicking, chittering voice. We will hear testimony from all witnesses and then decide on appropriate action. The first witnesses were other instructors who had arrived after the incident. They testified about finding Veltara with a broken arm and Tae-ho standing over her. Their testimony made it sound like Tae-ho had simply attacked without warning. Then Veltara took the stand. Her version of events was very different from what had actually happened. I was conducting a standard demonstration on defensive techniques, she said, her voice strong despite her injury. The human became aggressive and refused to follow instructions. When I attempted to correct his form, he grabbed my arm and deliberately broke it. Was this a sanctioned combat exercise? Asked one of the tribunal members. No. It was a learning demonstration. There was no reason for him to use force at all. Admiral Kixmoth looked at Tae-ho with his large compound eyes. How do you respond to these accusations, Cadet Kim? Before Tae-ho could answer, Commander Lee stood up. With respect, Admiral, I request that we review the complete security footage of the incident before hearing responses. Security footage? Veltara's voice cracked slightly. I don't think that's necessary. We have witness testimony. I insist, Commander Lee said calmly. The Academy records all training sessions for safety and evaluation purposes. Let us see what actually happened. Admiral Kixmoth ordered the footage to be displayed on the room's large screen. For the next 10 minutes, everyone watched the entire incident unfold in complete silence. The recording showed everything: Veltara's increasingly aggressive demonstration, her verbal abuse, Tae-ho's attempts to defend himself without fighting back, and finally the devastating blow to his face that sent him crashing into the equipment. When the footage ended, the room was dead quiet. Several of the tribunal members looked uncomfortable. Admiral Kixmoth's antenna twitched in what Tae-ho had learned was a sign of agitation. Instructor Veltara, the Admiral said slowly, this appears to show events quite differently from your testimony. Veltara's scales had turned a darker color, indicating stress. The human was not following proper form. I was attempting to correct him. By striking him repeatedly in the head and torso, Commander Lee asked. Is that standard teaching procedure at this academy? He needed to learn discipline. Actually, said a new voice from the back of the room, he showed incredible discipline. Everyone turned to see Nexaviral standing in the witness area. The young insectoid cadet was trembling, but his voice was steady. I request permission to testify, he said. Admiral Kicksmoth nodded. "Approach the stand, Cadet Next Viral." As Next Viral walked forward, he passed close to Tae-ho. "I should have spoken up sooner," he whispered. "I'm sorry." Once on the stand, Next Viral told the truth about what he had witnessed over the past weeks. He described how Veltara had consistently treated the human cadets more harshly than others, giving them impossible scenarios and criticizing them for responses that she praised in alien cadets. "But what I will never forget," he said, "is how Cadet Kim tried not to fight back. Even when she was hurting him, even when she was humiliating him in front of everyone, he kept trying to follow orders. Any warrior from my world would have attacked much sooner." Sora was called to testify next. She provided a detailed account of the weeks of discrimination and the final incident. Her testimony was clear and factual, but her anger at the unfair treatment was obvious. "Instructor Veltara called us primitives and animals," she said. "She said we didn't belong in civilized society. But when one of us finally stood up for himself, she calls him a monster." Then came testimony from other cadets. Some supported Veltara's version of events, claiming that Tae-ho had been aggressive and threatening from the beginning. But others, inspired by Next Viral's courage, began to tell the truth. A young ethereal cadet named Silandra spoke about seeing Veltara deliberately give human cadets failing grades on exercises they had performed perfectly. A Rockling cadet described hearing Veltara tell other instructors that humans should be expelled from the academy. As more testimony emerged, a clear picture developed of systematic discrimination against the human cadets. Finally, it was Tae-ho's turn to speak. He stood before the tribunal, his face still showing bruises from Veltara's attacks. "I came to this academy to serve in the galactic military," he said simply. "I wanted to prove that humans could be good soldiers and good allies. I tried to fit in and follow all the rules." He looked directly at Admiral Kicksmoth. "But I will not be beaten and humiliated just because I come from Earth. If defending myself from an attacker makes me a monster, then I guess I am a monster. But I would rather be a monster than a victim." Admiral Kicksmoth was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Commander Lee. "I understand you have conducted your own investigation into human physical capabilities?" Commander Lee nodded and activated a portable display. "Human physiology is unlike anything else in the known galaxy. Our bone density is 3 times that of most species. Our muscle fibers are designed to work under gravity that would crush most beings. Our reflexes have been honed by millions of years of surviving on a world that actively tried to kill us." The display showed comparisons between human physical abilities and those of other galactic species. In almost every category, strength, speed, endurance, reaction time, humans scored far above average. "Most importantly," Commander Lee continued, "we have learned to control these abilities through strict discipline and training. What you saw from Cadet Kim was not a loss of control. It was perfect control used to stop an attack with minimal necessary force." "Minimal?" Veltara shouted from her seat. "He broke my arm." Commander Lee turned to face her. "Instructor Veltara, you weigh approximately twice what Cadet Kim weighs. You have longer reach, natural weapons in your claws and teeth, and 50 years of combat training. If he had wanted to truly hurt you, you would not be here to complain about a broken arm." He turned back to the tribunal. "The fact that he used a simple restraining technique instead of a killing blow shows remarkable discipline, not lack of it." Admiral Kicksmoth looked around the table at his fellow tribunal members. After a few moments of quiet discussion in their various languages, he stood up. This tribunal finds that Instructor Veltara violated Academy policies regarding fair treatment of cadets and appropriate use of force in training exercises. She is hereby stripped of her teaching duties and reassigned to administrative work. Veltara started to protest, but the Admiral continued. Cadet Kim is found to have acted in justified self-defense. However, he will receive a formal reprimand for the use of excessive force, with the understanding that cultural differences in combat response must be taken into account. The Admiral's compound eyes fixed on Tae-ho. You will also undergo additional training in galactic military protocols and cross-species interaction. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was fair. Tae-ho nodded his acceptance. Finally, Admiral Kixmoth announced, "This incident has revealed serious gaps in our understanding of human capabilities and psychology. All Academy staff will undergo mandatory education about Deathworld species." 2 months had passed since the tribunal, and the Galactic Military Academy felt like a completely different place. The changes started small. Human cadets were no longer given impossible scenarios designed to make them fail. Their physical training was adjusted to actually challenge them instead of being too easy. Most importantly, instructors began treating them with the same respect given to cadets from other worlds. Tae-ho walked through the corridors without feeling like everyone was staring at him with fear or hatred. Some cadets still avoided him, but others had begun approaching with genuine curiosity about Earth and human abilities. "Is it true that your planet has storms that can destroy entire cities?" asked Ki-Wen, a young ethereal cadet who had become friendly with the humans. "Some storms are very powerful," Tae-ho replied as they walked to their next class. "But we've learned to predict them and protect ourselves. Humans are good at adapting to dangerous situations." Their destination was advanced combat training, now taught by Commander Rixdahl, a professional soldier who had replaced Veltara. Unlike his predecessor, Rixdahl was interested in learning about different fighting styles from across the galaxy. "Today, we will practice combat techniques from various worlds," he announced to the mixed class of 30 cadets. "Each species has developed methods suited to their environment and physiology. We can all learn from each other." He gestured to Tae-ho. "Cadet Kim, would you demonstrate the defensive technique you used during your previous incident?" Tae-ho stepped forward, no longer nervous about being singled out. Over the past weeks, he had learned that standing out wasn't always a bad thing. "This is called an arm bar," he explained, moving slowly so everyone could see. "It uses leverage and body position rather than pure strength. On Earth, we teach it to children so they can defend themselves against larger attackers." He demonstrated the technique with a volunteer, being very careful not to actually apply pressure. The other cadets watched with interest rather than fear. "The key is timing and precision," Tae-ho continued. "It's not about being strong. It's about understanding how joints work and using an attacker's momentum against them." After class, Nexaviral caught up with him in the hallway. The insectoid cadet had become one of Tae-ho's closest friends at the academy. "My parent cluster received a message from Earth," Nexaviral said excitedly. "They want to establish cultural exchange programs between our worlds." Tae-ho smiled. "That's great news. Maybe we can help other species understand that humans aren't dangerous monsters." "Actually," Nexaviral replied, "I think they understand now that you are dangerous. They just also understand that you choose not to be." That afternoon, all the cadets gathered in the main assembly hall for a special announcement. Admiral Kixmoth stood at the podium, his compound eyes reflecting the lights as he looked out over the crowd. Over the past months, we have learned valuable lessons about diversity, understanding, and the importance of treating all beings with respect, he began. These lessons came at a cost, but they have made our academy stronger. He gestured to a group of instructors standing nearby. I am pleased to announce that former instructor Veltara has requested to speak to you all today. Murmurs spread through the assembly as Veltara walked slowly to the podium. Her arm had healed, but she moved carefully, like someone who had learned painful lessons about underestimating others. Cadets, she began, her voice much quieter than it had been in the past. I stand before you today to acknowledge my mistakes and apologize for my conduct. She looked directly at the human cadets sitting in the front rows. I allowed prejudice and fear to cloud my judgment. I treated beings poorly because I did not understand them, and I refused to learn because I thought I already knew everything. Her yellow eyes found Taeho in the crowd. Cadet Kim, I called you primitive and said you didn't belong among civilized beings. I was wrong. You showed more restraint and discipline in one moment than I had shown in weeks of poor teaching. The hall was completely quiet as she continued. I have spent the last months studying human culture and history. I have learned about your wars, your struggles, and your incredible ability to work together in the face of impossible odds. I have also learned that strength without wisdom is useless, but wisdom without the strength to act is equally meaningless. She straightened up, and, for the first time in months, she looked like the confident instructor she had once been. You have both, and that makes you valuable allies, not dangerous enemies. Veltara stepped back from the podium as Admiral Kicksmoth took her place again. In recognition of these lessons, I am announcing a new program at the Academy. Mixed species teams will be formed for all advanced training exercises. Each team will include cadets from different worlds, including at least one from a high-gravity or dangerous environment. Excited chatter filled the hall as cadets began thinking about who they might work with. Additionally, the Admiral continued, we will be expanding our curriculum to include survival techniques from Deathworlds, advanced combat methods from warrior species, and diplomatic protocols from peaceful civilizations. We will learn from everyone. After the assembly, Taeho found himself surrounded by cadets asking questions about Earth and human abilities. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, the questions came from curiosity rather than fear. How do you run so fast in heavy gravity? Asked one. What's it like to live through a hurricane? Asked another. Could you teach us some of your fighting techniques? Taeho answered their questions patiently, enjoying the chance to share knowledge rather than hide his abilities. Later that evening, he sat in the observation lounge with Sora, Nexaviral, and several other cadets who had become friends over the past weeks. Through the large windows, they could see stars scattered across the darkness of space. Do you ever miss Earth? Silandra asked. The young ethereal had become fascinated by stories of human resilience. Every day, Sora replied. But I think we're doing something important here. We're showing the galaxy that different doesn't mean dangerous. Well, Nexaviral clicked with amusement. Different can be dangerous. But dangerous isn't the same as evil. Taeho nodded, watching a transport ship dock at one of the station's ports. My grandfather used to say that the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire. Earth was our fire. It made us strong, but it also taught us to protect others who might not be as strong. Is that why you wouldn't give up on those holographic civilians in the simulation? Kiwen asked. Partly, Tejo said, but mostly because abandoning people who need help just feels wrong. It doesn't matter if they're real or holograms, human or alien. If someone needs help and you can give it, you should. A few weeks later, the first mixed species teams were announced. Tejo found himself assigned to a squad that included Sora, Nexaviral, Kiawen, and 2 other cadets from different worlds. Their first mission was a rescue simulation on a hostile planet with extreme weather and dangerous terrain. Unlike the previous scenarios designed to teach acceptable losses, this mission was meant to test their ability to work together and save everyone. The holographic planet was a nightmare of acid rain, unstable ground, and predatory creatures. The weather systems changed without warning, and the terrain tried to kill them at every step. It was, in other words, a lot like Earth on a bad day. Tejo led his team through the challenges with confidence, using skills he had learned growing up on a death world. But more importantly, he taught his teammates how to adapt and survive in conditions they had never imagined. Nexaviral used his 4 arms and compound eyes to spot dangers that others missed. Kaiwen's telepathic abilities helped coordinate the team when communication devices failed. Sora's medical training kept everyone healthy in the toxic environment. Working together, they not only completed the mission but rescued every simulated civilian while taking 0 casualties. When they emerged from the simulation, Commander Rixdahl was waiting with other instructors and several high-ranking officers from different species. "Congratulations," he said with genuine pride. "That was the most challenging rescue scenario in our database. Most teams consider it unwinnable." "It wasn't that hard," Tejo replied honestly. "We just had to work together and not give up." Admiral Kixmoth stepped forward, his antenna twitching with what Tejo had learned was approval. "Cadet Kim, when you first arrived here, many questioned whether humans belonged in the galactic military. You have answered that question definitively." He looked around at all the cadets who had gathered to watch. "You don't belong in the military because you're human. You belong because you're exactly the kind of being the galaxy needs protecting. It." That night, Tejo stood again at the observation window, looking out at the stars. But this time, he wasn't thinking about home or feeling alone. He was thinking about the future and all the people across the galaxy who might need help someday, somewhere. Among those stars were worlds in danger, beings in trouble, and challenges that would require the combined strength of many species working together. And for the first time since leaving Earth, Tejo felt ready for whatever the universe might throw at them. After all, he was human. He was from a death world, and he had learned that being from a place that tried to kill you every day didn't make you a monster. It made you prepared.